Today we're going to recap the Portland metro area January market stats that were just released from RMLS. My name's David Caldwell. I'm in an office. I'm here with Krista Britton. Again, she's in her laundry room, but we don't care where she is. But we're just going to go through these market stats. So do you want me to start or would you like to start?
You should start because you are the stat king.
Okay. Hey, when people ask, well, and let's not even say stats. Like I have to do a talk about how to talk about the real estate market, and it's not about the data points. It's about the context that the data points give you, or the story, or what's it mean to a buyer or seller. Mm-hmm. So the hope, if you're a potential would-be buyer or seller now or anytime in the future, then when we talk about these things, we're not just talking about a number, but we're talking about how it would impact your buying and or selling journey. So let's look at the first thing, which is, I think when people say, how's the market? The first question that they're asking or what they're thinking about is what's going on with home values. Like Tom would say, is my equity safe? Mm-hmm. Right? So when we look at the past 12 months, the average sales price in the Portland metro area has declined to $599,000, $300 from $609,200. The median sales price has declined 2.8% from $532,500 from $548. Okay. Now, some people might say, well, if we look at the year-to-date summary, the average sales price is up January over January. And that's true. January of 2024 was more expensive than January 2023. But the January 2024 market, when we talk about listings pending sales, this is important context. The average sales price was $564,600 during the month of January. By contrast, when we look at the month of December, last month, the 12-month rate of appreciation was $598,000. So we're selling a less expensive product than we did in 2023 as an average, which is going to make a market maybe move quicker in some ways. But we'll get into talk about that. Thoughts on what we're seeing average sales price change, Krista?
I mean, after what we saw last year, I think it's not as big of a dip as a lot of people would expect. I think the whole idea, right, last year was that the Fed was really trying to get home values to come down, and it marginally moved with everything that happened. So that shows a lot of resilience, I think, within the housing market and with appreciation and with people's equity.
Yeah, I agree. Like if you're someone watching this and you're like, the housing market is going to crash, it only crashes if the entire U.S. Economy crashes. And even then, certain parts of the economy can crash, and homeowners still fiercely protect their equity, right? For values to crash, you have to have people losing their homes. Mm-hmm. And we know we have one of the lowest foreclosure rates that we've ever had in history, mm-hmm. because people are locked into these historically low mortgage payments. So since you mentioned Jerome Powell, I want to bring something else about Jerome Powell and mortgage rates, because yesterday we're flirting with 7% mortgage rates. Mm-hmm. But for the last 90 days, seemingly, it seems like everyone in our profession is talking about how there's going to be 3 to 6 rate cuts.
Right.
And Jerome Powell has stated that rate cuts are likely, but they are not promised. Nope. They are not a contractual obligation. Nope. They're not a pinky swear. We hope that they're going to happen. They might not, right? Like not as fast as we want. They might be more of like a Q3, Q4 thing. Mm-hmm. But if the economy keeps chugging along, doing well, employment's great, all these numbers we see are good numbers, it might be some time, right? So if we have we know what happened in the Portland metro area when we averaged a 6.5% mortgage rate in 2023. Home values compressed. Buyers got a lot of their closing costs paid. Mm-hmm. Great houses still sold. Some houses sold at record pricing. There's multiple offers in every market. Let's mm-hmm. remember that. Just because someone's in a multiple offer situation doesn't mean every house is going to be. So, we are hopeful for declines in mortgage rates, I guess, to summarize this little rant.
That'd be
But
great. But what did we also say when, in order to get back to those historic rates, what has to happen?
we're never going to get back to 2 or
No,
3% rates unless we
have
have
another
an
10.
economic crisis or a
Yeah.
pandemic or
Yeah. Something
something.
bad's got to happen.
But what would it take to even have a 5% rate? Right? What would it take to
Yeah.
have a rate in the high fours? So, okay, let's get into what happened with listings. So I want to start by saying this is something I wrote down in my notes. In 2023, we had the lowest number of new listings of any January since 1992. In 2024, we were second by only 3 listings. So, the number of new listings that came to the market this January is abysmal. And why is that important to note? I saw a lot of my peers snapshot part of this report that we're reviewing, and they only snapshotted these upper 2 numbers and they trimmed off the lower ones. It's like only show people the good news, not the bad. New listings were up 89.2%. That's what that says, right? Versus December. Well, shoot, we know people don't list their home during December.
Yeah.
But if we zoom out, the bigger picture is we have the lowest number of new listings that have come to the market essentially in 30 years, right? Last year and this year, which doesn't start the year off great. But there's another thing that we need to look at with that is we're also starting off the year with the highest levels of inventory that we have in some time because the pace of sales is also not great. So, with all those things being said, there's lots of optimism in the market. Like you can't go on an Instagram feed if you're Krista and I look at our peers and not see people like super hyped talking about how great and robust the market is. This is a supply and demand issue. We have a severely low supply of homes today. If you're a seller, that's an opportunity for you, right? And maybe not an opportunity in June, July, August,
Yeah. When
but an
everybody
opportunity
is waiting to
February,
list.
March. Yeah. But in February, March, maybe April opportunity because we don't know what's going to happen. Um, Thoughts?
No, I agree. I had a question for you and I just forgot it. So I will think about it. It'll come back to me. Mom brain.
Okay, so let's move on to pending sales.
Okay.
In January, we had 1,492 pending sales. Here's a note I wrote to myself. It's been more than 10 years since we've seen a January with that few pending sales. We have to go back to 2011, where we had 1,489 pending sales. We had 1,492 in 2024. I mean, you and I both sold real estate in 2011. It was hard.
Yeah. It was a
It was hard. And look, one of the reasons it was hard was people were unemployed and they couldn't buy.
mm-hmm.
Now people are employed, but rates are so high, it makes it challenging
Yeah.
for them to buy.
Prices are high, rates are high, affordability.
Yeah, we have a similar condition of the market. We don't have the same symptom,
Mm-hmm.
but we have a similar condition. The condition is in the Portland metro area, it's expensive to be a buyer, and it's more challenging. But David, I had 18% interest rates back in the 1980s, but as a percentage of your income, it was much lower, right? Your housing payment was much lower.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter you had an 18% interest rate. With a $600,000 average sales price and a 7% interest rate, as a percentage of people's income, it's very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that show up in pending sales. When you think about the health of a market, right? How's the market? It's a question. How's the health of a market? Can people buy and are housing prices going up? The symptom of affordability makes the market, seem a little bit sick, right? We're used to selling a lot more real estate. The reason we're not is people just can't afford to buy. That puts downward pressure if you're a seller, by the way. And if you're a buyer, that's an opportunity. It's a significant challenge, but it's also what creates an opportunity for you. Because when we zoom out, the metro area still has a housing shortage. It's very expensive to build a home here. We'll never have affordable housing as long as it costs $60,000, $70,000 to get permits on a home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Thoughts on pending sales?
Yeah, that sounds about right. My thoughts are your thoughts, David?
So let's move to closed sales. So as an average over the last 10 years, in the month of January, we've closed 1,610 listings in January, which is usually one of the lower months for closed sales. Well, this January we closed 1,120.
And that, I mean, tells us December was extra dead, correct?
December was
Because
extra
you,
slow.
because you're going to have
So
that rollover, right, for closings in January.
yeah. So maybe you're a seller that removed your home from the market during that time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it was really slow. Maybe you have a conversation with your agent or a different agent about how to position yourself in the coming years if you're still thinking about selling. But maybe there are some sellers that are watching this right now that are thinking about their experience in December. It was slow. My business coach has a tendency to think that the market being slow shouldn't matter. It really matters, right? Because we're operating within a marketplace. Hey, why is the beginning of February, January been a good time for some sellers to sell? Because the serious buyers that are out in the marketplace, they're dealing with a historic low of new listings,
Mm-hmm. And they're
right?
looking until they find the right house, right? And then a lot of times that right house is rare and it comes on and then it gets multiple offers. So then they
Yeah.
get beat and they're still looking.
And if we go back to closed sales, I've said this for years. I just believe that most people's plans don't change; they just get delayed.
Mm-hmm.
Some by a matter of months, some for years. But we also had a really big low for sales in December. Those sales just move forward, right? Like they're moving into other months of the year based on affordability. Hey, when rates come back to 5.5, 5%, 4.5%, you talk about this rush of people coming into the market. You see all these videos online about houses are gonna be like Stanley bottles, and you're not gonna be able to buy them. Maybe. I don't know if that's the truth, but certainly as affordability comes back, we know that the majority of Americans make most of their wealth in home ownership,
Mm-hmm.
and if people can afford to own homes, they generally want to. So I do expect as there's downward pressure on rates, more people come back. But hey, are we going to have a hot market next year? I don't think so. Election years usually aren't hot,
Yeah. Well, I
or
mean,
this
there's a lot
year.
of uncertainty, right? Like everyone's stressed about what's going to happen, depending on what side you are, that the world's going to end,
Mhm.
right?
That's
So,
election year.
you know, half America thinks the world's going to end and people are stressed and are they going to lose their jobs and what's going to happen and which is understandable. And that doesn't, provoke a lot of risk taking.
Yeah. I think if you're a seller, I think what sellers need to understand, given the market conditions right now, is when you look at the data, there's no significant change from 2023 to 2024.
Yeah.
If there's no significant change, we shouldn't expect different market conditions. Now, markets can change very quickly, but it wasn't too long ago we were at 8% interest rates, and people were like, oh, here come the fives.
Yeah.
And what happened? We went down to like 6.25, and now we're creeping back up towards 7 on economic data, on the Fed's potential delaying of that first rate cut in March that people thought was going to come. So if you're a home seller and the conditions are different, and last year was difficult for a home seller, you have to be prepared and you have to have a strategy. If you're a special product, I had a client this past weekend who has a really special home. Market conditions don't matter. It's going to get multiple offers,
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be many buyers for it because it's zero point 0.4 acres with a shop, updated. It's a very special property, positioned well, multiple offer situation, right? So, but there are homes, like I live in a subdivision where there's lots of duplicate homes. And if those duplicate homes are on the market for the same time, it's usually who gives me the best deal. So timing and strategy becomes important if you're a seller. What's your advice to sellers,
Hold
Krista?
on. Hold on. I remembered my question. This is
Yeah.
This is exciting for me. So, would you say, and I heard of, I had a a buyer talking to me about this this week, and I thought it was interesting. They said, depending on how the year starts, really shows us how the year is going to go in real estate. And I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting thought. And I was curious what you would say to someone who would say that, like, depending on the start of the year, that usually tells us the trend that we're going to see. Would you agree with that? I mean, because for me, I feel like it all depends on, I would never have thought that pandemic was coming and then real estate stopped and then it went crazy.
Yeah, I would disagree.
Yeah.
Um, because 12 months is a long time.
Yeah.
Right? We have 11 months of changes ahead of us, which is why we do this show monthly, which is why we look at data so frequently. If we look at the Tigard market, I'm going to use Tigard as an example. The last 3 months have been more expensive than those same months the year before.
Mm-hmm.
But before those 3 months of positive growth, there were 12 consecutive months of negative growth.
Yeah.
Now, that could be an opportunity for someone in Tigard to take advantage of right now. But what could happen is the average sales price in Tigard could become less expensive than the same month the year before, where it's impossible to have appreciation, which is what that market experienced last year.
Mm-hmm.
And what's gonna do that, right? Affordability. Hopes, optimism can only get you so far.
Yeah.
If we think really pragmatically, the symptom is people can't, or the symptom is affordability. That's what's making the market sick right now.
So that leads me to your question, right? About, what I would recommend for home sellers right now is you have to remember that affordability is hard. So when your home has been sitting for a while, one of the things that your realtor should be going over with you is like, hey, if somebody offers X, this is what their monthly payment's going to look like. Because a lot of times people forget they're either locked into a low rate or maybe they've been in their house for so long it's paid off. They forget what the monthly cost is going to be. And then on top of that, what kind of deferred maintenance do you have? Because when people come in your home and they're already looking at, hey, my monthly payment is going to be $4,000, right? On the average sales price home, depending on how much you put down, right? You're probably looking about $4,000 for like what, a $5,500, a $550,000 home. Is that what we did the math at?
It's like 4,000 for a $600,000 house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
depending on your down payment, whatnot.
Yeah.
So $4,000 a month. Plus, you come in and you're like, all right, well, it needs new flooring, it needs new siding, the house needs to be painted. The sprinkler systems aren't working. All of those things, the sellers or potential buyers walking around, and those numbers are just ticking off in their head, and they're like, "Wow, we can't afford it. It's already at the top of our budget, and visibly, these are all the things we need to do." So, as a home seller, getting your house ready so when a buyer walks in, they're not just red flag, need a new fence, because a lot of people don't even think to ask; they just walk away because they don't understand that sellers will negotiate. But they just end up walking away until they find a house that looks like, okay, I don't need to do anything, right? So having your house ready and presentable is really, really important, especially in today when everything costs so much and buyers are already overwhelmed, especially first-time home buyers who have never owned anything before, and the whole concept is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? Make it easy.
I ask this question a lot right now, which is, like, let's just look at a $600,000 house at 7% interest, right? Here's what the payment is. A $600,000 house, you put $120,000 down. You finance $480,000 at 6.97%. Your homeowner's insurance is $1,000 a year. That's pretty inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
Your taxes are $6,000 a year, which is $500 a month. For the Portland metro area, that's very inexpensive. And if you had HOA dues of $600 a year, which again is an inexpensive HOA for some neighborhoods, that's a $3,800 a month payment. How many people do you know that are spending $40,000 or $50,000 a year on housing, or can they afford to? So Chris is right. When you're looking at selling your home, you have to look at comparables, but you also have to think today about, is my house worth this payment, given the condition? Is my home special enough for someone to absorb that high payment, hopefully in the short term? Because the benefits of home ownership are paramount and
Mm-hmm.
people still need to move and live, and life isn't all about money. But that's what's created a significant challenge in the Portland housing market. And if you don't think there is one, here's just numbers from last year: 29,689 listings, 20,941 sales. There's a big gap between new listings and how many homes sold. And a big reason that gap exists is because of affordability.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give advice to buyers.
All right, buyers, talk with your mortgage broker. All right, there's lots of different loans out there, and it's really, really important to align yourself and go in knowing what you're comfortable with your monthly payment, what your closing costs are going to be. And there's different scenarios, right? So knowing the different scenarios, because some homes might not accept certain loans, right? So it's going in with the knowledge of what you want, what you're comfortable at. And I mean, nobody wants to go get pre-approved. You got to get all of your documents together. You got to get, none of the fun stuff. But it's key before you go shopping, right? So that way when you can make an offer, you're ready. I can't tell you how many people don't have it together, fall in love with the house, miss out on it just because they didn't go through that process soon enough and they had time, right? It's just everyone puts that stuff off. I mean, we're all guilty of it. So talking with an expert and really getting your numbers dialed in is really, really important.
Yeah. Look, you just have to be prepared. That's what I hear in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be prepared. You have to have the right team to help represent you. We're not going to a car dealership and buying a $30,000 car we're going to trade in 5 years from now. You're buying an asset that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it benefits you to be prepared. Going in with that team, I think everyone needs to work with an agent that's pragmatic, that understands the challenges and opportunities of the market, so they can help you wade through those and get the right home at the right price under the right conditions. And I do think, going back to this talk I'm going to do for the real estate community next week, I'm going to talk about how a lot of real estate agents, all they sell is friendship. They just sell proximity.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm next to you, so buy a house from me. And we know from studies that most people choose a real estate agent that way. We also know from studies that most people don't like us and what we do. And I wonder if there's a correlation between those things. Because there's people with a
You're
real
just,
estate license and then there's professional real estate agents.
mm-hmm.
They're not the same thing. What were you going to say, Krista?
Well, I was just thinking about that, like, yeah, because you're basically picking, if you're like, I don't want to pick my doctor because they live next door to me. I want to pick someone that has good reviews, that has experience, that knows what they're doing, all of those things, right? Not, oh yeah, he lives next door. He's probably going to show up drunk tomorrow morning and operate on me, but that's all right. He lives next door. Like, why would you pick your realtor that way?
Most people do.
Mm-hmm.
But, in some marketplaces, let's be real, that's probably okay. In this marketplace, that has a more damning effect. And if you want, I can go back to those how many homes were listed versus how many bought numbers. Because some people just didn't do what they were supposed to, either advising their clients, marketing the property. Like, we know that most people, like most professional real estate agents, don't spend very much money on marketing. Right? Like, I mean, nothing. Like, if you go look at studies, it's like $3,000 or something, like $4,000. Man, like, we spend $1,500 on photographing and video for one house, and then we spend money behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how much money that we spend to get our listings in front of people, because it does make a difference. But going back to buyers as kind of a seller benefit, if you're working with someone who doesn't understand what's happening in the market and why, look, if you stay in a house for 10 years, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to feel so smart that you made so much money.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be a better path, I guess, is what I'm suggesting. Right. And I do think that, at the end of the day, 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000, getting a house in the right condition, it makes a difference. So, all right. Anything else, Krista?
That is good. That's a solid Thursday right there.
Well, if you guys want to get in touch with us, if you have any questions on the market, email us at hello@hillshirerealtygroup.com, and we'll see you next time.